Our society is so advanced, we don't have one revolution going on. We have two, count them, two revolutions at the same time. You might recall that in the late 19th century, that would be your late 1800s, just in case you don't homeschool, we had ourselves a little something called the Industrial Revolution. Progressively, our society went from being very manual labor, very agrarian, to very industrial. Factories, mass production. It was a revolution that caused a lot of people to have their apple carts upset. What do we do with this? How do we live? It's all so foreign. Telephones, mass communication, mass production. There's a train coming to town. They wrestled with how to deal with a shifting culture. Well, we settled into that rather nicely in the 1900s until a little something called the technological revolution came along. Enough said. This is the technological revolution, and we aren't even done with it, and we're getting ourselves a brand new revolution. You say, what revolution is that? I call it the moral revolution. We, living in the technological revolution, are now suddenly involved in a moral revolution. Historically in our country, we have basically accepted biblical values and principles. Now, that doesn't mean everybody was saved. It just means in general, we lived kind of biblically. There was a book that we all agreed, this kind of guides us, but progressively, things started to change in the 20th century, and now we are in a full-blown moral revolution. So now we got to deal with technology and all of its implications. And can I just say as an aside, if you're a young parent, I do not envy you. It is very difficult raising up the kids without them going off into zombie world for about 20 hours a day. Not only do we need to figure that out more and settle into the new technological normal, now we have got ourselves a revolution, frankly, that I think makes the industrial and the technological revolution look like patty cakes.
You say that within the span of a generation, an entire moral understanding here in North America has been reversed. So unpack this for me and explain how it happened.
You know, recently that was an observation in a cover story of Time magazine, the very same thing. They were timing it at 25 years, saying that this vast sexual moral revolution that doesn't leave anything in the culture untouched has happened in what to those who had been the originators of that movement and the callers for that revolution, what might have seemed like a long time. He said 25 years, but as he said, this is David von Drele in Time, he said, that's the blink of an eye in human history. And we really have never experienced anything like this. And there are all kinds of reasons for it, but the bottom line is that no part of the culture is going to be untouched. Whether it's the tax code, or it's going to be regulations about daycare, whether it's going to be the definition of marriage, or even whether you can use words like mom and dad and sister and brother in children's books, nothing's going to be left untouched. We haven't had any moral revolution on this scale in human history.
In human history, thus saith the man with the bow tie, who clearly has the authority to make such a claim. How did we get here? How is it that all of a sudden, under the watch of the predominant cult of culture, that would be Christianity, do we find ourselves living basically in a moral revolution? Who is it that gets the credit for this?
How did it happen so fast?
Well, it couldn't come out of a vacuum. And so
Right.
the first Christian answer to that is secularization. Because if we were living in a time where the only dominant prevailing worldview was that of biblical Christianity, then this would have been impossible. This couldn't have happened in the medieval age. This couldn't have happened even in the early modern age. This could only have happened after modernity had so shifted the worldview of most of the people in what we might call the industrialized world. There's already a sense of a vastly changed worldview, and that has made all these changes inevitable.
Congratulations, secularization. You are leading the new moral revolution. How profound is it? Well, you may recall that recently, as in just the other day, the former editor of Christianity Today came out of the closet on the closet issue. That's right, the magazine that began in the late 1950s claiming we stand firmly on the Word of God. Why? Because Christianity Today, the Christian magazine of record, was begun by a group of men, including Billy Graham, who said, secularization is starting to win the day. We better come up with a magazine that speaks against culture. Fast forward, the editor, who just retired in 2013, agrees with Tony Campolo that the Christian church needs to start embracing gay marriage. He was the editor of the magazine that was begun to fight against secularism. Thankfully, the new editor, Mark Golly at Christianity Today, made a pretty strong statement stating, ooh, that's a big bummer. We don't agree with that at all, so we're grateful for that. And yet, what do we see going on in culture? The secularists are even influencing people in the church. You say, well, big deal, big whoop. They're not going to bother me. Well, I wonder if Dr. Jennifer Robach Morse thought the same thing when she was invited to speak to the University of California, Santa Barbara students on the issue of traditional marriage. That's right, she didn't crash the party. She was invited to go speak at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Sounds pretty nifty, doesn't it? I'll bet it's really reasonably priced. And what happened when she began to talk about the issue of traditional marriage? Well, the new morality police stood up and said, you traditionalists, you Bible-thumping wingnuts, you have no voice in the new moral revolution.